Thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Lucky Brain Tumor Podcast. I'm Emily Truel, and I am delighted to have with me today Betty. Betty, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, Betty, tell me a little bit about getting diagnosed with an acoustic neuroma and how that went in your life.
My story, I think, is pretty unique. I had no idea I had an acoustic neuroma. I went to the dentist for a regular cleaning, and he said, "It's time for your Panorex." And I said, "Okay." So he did that, and he said, "Well, there's a spot on your jawbone that I want you to go to an oral surgeon and get looked at." So they did a 360. And they were like, "Oh, yeah, you have some salivary stones." I didn't even know what those were. And so we were just sort of chatting after he did that 360 to find the salivary stone. And I've had two melanomas previously. So he said, "Well, maybe if we want to be extra cautious, we should have an MRI done." And I was kind of like on the fence. I'm like, "Oh, do I really have to do that?" Well, okay. So I got the MRI and I went back to his office to get the results. And first of all, his staff could not pull up the MRI on the display in the office. And I thought that was kind of weird. Well, there was a reason for that. So then the doctor comes in and he says, "I'm really sorry to tell you this, but you have a brain tumor." And I was like, "What?" Completely out of the blue, unexpected. So this office is about 30 minutes away from where my parents lived, and I left the parking lot. I'm calling my husband. He's like, "Okay, I'm leaving work. I'm coming home. We're going to deal with this." And I turned to the next street, and my parents were walking across the road in an area that they would never have been in otherwise, but they were going to a luncheon. And it was like, it just kind of felt like divine fate. And so I turned around and I quickly pulled in. And my dad is hard of hearing, so he didn't really pay much attention. And I said, "Mom, get in the car. I need to talk to you." And so she got in the car and I told her, and she's like, "Well, whatever it is, we're here for you. We're going to deal with it." So I, dropped her off, drove home, and as I was driving home, I remembered that I teach clarinet lessons, and one of my students' fathers was the chief of neurosurgery at Georgetown MedStar. So when I got home, I called his wife because I had her cell number, and she said, "Oh, you want to talk to my husband? Well, he's sitting right next to me. We're having lunch." And so he said, "Okay, read me what it says on the MRI." And I did that. And he said, "Okay, I will clear my schedule tomorrow morning. You and your husband come to my office and I'll meet with you. And we'll get this taken care of." And so we went in and he showed it to us and he explained it. And he said, "Well, there are several choices." Mine was 2.2 centimeters, so he said doing nothing was not really an option. But he said that if I had surgery, there was a very high likelihood that my career as a professional musician would be over. So he said that he had trained with some really remarkable people at UPMC in Pittsburgh, and he said that they do this cyberknife radiation therapy. And he said, "I think you should, explore all your options, get a lot of other opinions." But I did that, and in the end, we went to UPMC in Pittsburgh, and I had a fantastic experience there. The team was wonderful. They really treated me individually, and the radiation oncologist and the neurotologist worked together to program the robot so that it would minimize any destruction of my auditory nerve and my facial nerve, because both of those are pretty important for playing clarinet. And so my mom went with me, and I went a couple months after that diagnosis, and I had 3 fractionated radiation therapy sessions. They were about an hour each, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then we flew home.
Wow. So, had you had any hearing loss
Nope. I
at the
still have
time of diagnosis?
100% of my hearing, which is very unusual.
That
Yes.
You are a unicorn in
Yes, I
the
know.
acoustic neuroma world. That's amazing. And
Yeah.
when did you have radiation? How long ago?
It was in January of 2017.
Oh, yeah. You are almost entirely outside the window where you typically see effects to hearing from radiation.
Right.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Now, I will not say it has been problem free.
Yeah.
For the, well, after the first session, I felt really ill. And it may have been partially stress, but the doctor had said, "Oh, a lot of people go right back to work after getting this the same day or whatever." But oh man, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I didn't feel like I could eat anything. And but then as the week progressed, it got easier. But I will say I was really, really exhausted for a good couple of months afterward. And then I started to have some issues. About 6 months later, it felt like I was spinning like a gyroscope. Just walking, or especially if I was in a car, that was, oh, it felt like I was on some crazy ride. But apparently, I did have some swelling in response to the radiation, and they did give me a couple of courses of steroids, which I didn't enjoy, but it did reduce the swelling. But I did vestibular rehabilitation therapy several times for the balance issues that I've had. My balance is never going to be 100%, but I'm okay with that. I can go back to my exercises and it really helps. So it's just something, if it's dusk or cloudy or rainy, I definitely feel like my balance is off. It's more affected in those conditions. Or if I go into a dark room or something, it definitely takes me a while to adjust.
Yeah. I have the exact same situation. Or even if I just have a head cold or something like
Yes,
that, like if I'm a little bit under the weather, I'm thrown off a little bit. I have to work a lot harder for that balance than I do typically.
definitely. Yes. Um, let's see, what else? Oh, there's one side effect that I have that's pretty annoying. Although in the big picture, it's probably nothing. But I often feel like I have ants crawling on my face because it's pressing on my facial nerve. Um, Luckily, I still have 100% control of my facial muscles and everything, but it's a weird sensation, and there doesn't seem to be a good way to get rid of it.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part of nerve issues. It
Right.
can be very uncomfortable, and we're very limited in options in those situations.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. And did you end up having any sort of like temporary issue with your face, or did you have full function the whole
No, I've
time?
never really had any issues other than that tingling.
Mhm. Wow.
Yeah.
And so now you've had lots of scans. It's been quite a few years. Has your tumor been very consistent? Did it shrink? Did it grow? What's that
It
look like
did.
for you?
It shrank a little bit, and it does. It's necrotic. So hopefully, knock on wood, it will not get any bigger. But I do go every year for a scan and a checkup.
Mhm. Oh, that's fantastic, though. I mean, shrinking is sort of the best possible. Like, if you have some shrinkage, that's great. So that's wonderful. And you haven't needed any further treatment.
No.
That's wonderful. So I guess I'd be curious to hear if you're willing to share some of the things that you went through as a musician undergoing this diagnosis. Obviously everyone's life is different, but there's some kind of special impacts in that situation.
In a way, I feel like it has increased my sensitivity to sound. And I know other people have reported that. Like, I really cannot go to a movie theater anymore. Even if I put in earplugs, it's just too much. Or any type of entertainment that's really loud, I just absolutely cannot tolerate it. So I do have to be careful, and I'm very conscious that I want to protect and preserve my hearing as much as possible. So if I'm sitting in front of percussion, I'll put in hearing protection, or I have a shield that I can put behind me. in orchestra. So, I definitely am doing everything that I can to keep the hearing that I do have. Um, Occasionally, I'll get tinnitus, especially if I'm tired. So, I think getting rest is really, really important. But I was afraid when I was first diagnosed. I didn't really tell anybody about it. Um, I teach about 35 students a week, and when I went up to get the radiation, I never told any of them what I was doing. I just said, I have to be away for a week. I have to go out of town. It's a medical thing. And that was it. I never told anybody about it because I didn't want to be looked at differently or like I had a disability. So I was very careful about who I told professionally as well. I just didn't want to be viewed differently or written off because I had this.
Yeah. Wow. That's, yeah, a lot of concern. You don't want to all of a sudden be passed over because people assume that you can't do your job.
Correct.
Yeah. Wow, that's really hard. And did you find a certain kind of timeline for your recovery from radiation? Like when did you feel like you were kind of getting more back to normal?
I think it really took a year to work through everything,
Hmm.
with the spinning sensations and the balance issues. That that was the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah.
So after about a year, I felt better.
And did you just take the 1 week off of work or did you take more time off of work?
No, I just took that. Yeah.
Wow. So, as you were kind of going through all of this, what did you find were some of the things that helped you the most with coping with your diagnosis?
I definitely think, belonging to the Acoustic Neuroma Association was really, really helpful. Although most of the people that I've met have chosen to have surgery. But now I found the musicians group, which is a lot of fun. It's really great to be part of that and share things. And I also give advice to people that are newly diagnosed, and these are your options, and this is what I chose, which I realize isn't what everybody would choose. But I think it's really important to have those choices explained fully. And, I sent my MRI to a bunch of different places across the country before I went ahead with the CyberKnife. So,
Yeah.
it's nice that we have so many different treatment options.
Yes, it is. It can be overwhelming when you're initially
Yes.
diagnosed and you're
Yes,
trying to figure it all
absolutely.
out. And
Yes.
and sometimes you just want someone to say like this is the right thing, and nobody's going to really say that mostly. And so
Right.
it's it's really hard, but with there being so many good options, there's really not a wrong option, right?
Right.
There's just lots of them and you have to pick what
Yes.
fits your life, which I think
Absolutely.
is what's so strong about your story is you made all of the choices that made sense for your life
Right.
and that worked out really well for you.
Yes.
Yeah. So what would you say was some of the most or maybe one of the most unexpected parts of your acoustic neuroma journey?
Oh, wow. Um, I mean, it's just been completely unexpected from the beginning, but just trying to make intelligent decisions and not let it overwhelm me. But I think my biggest challenge was really the balance issue and the feeling of spinning. That was very unsettling, and that lasted for a while.
And you said you did vestibular therapy multiple times, so it wasn't just like one time and then you were done. You needed to come back to
Right.
it.
I went and I did it for maybe a couple of months one time, and then maybe a year and a half later, I went back and did that process again.
And I think that's really important to share because I think sometimes people think of it like more linear, right? And like you'll do this and then you'll graduate and then you'll move on. And that's not always how these things go. They can be very nonlinear.
Correct.
And I recently was reading an article in the Acoustic Neuroma Notes magazine about how vestibular therapy may need to come back at different points in your life and different things that occur. And I thought that was so important to share because people might not think of it that way as like this is a tool that you can go back to whenever you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And I think when I did it the second time, I took better notes on, these are the things that I can do at home if it crops up again to help.
that's great. Yeah, because it really is about practicing those exercises regularly.
Absolutely. And I do Orange Theory Fitness.
Mm.
So when I'm in those classes, often there are exercises that we do that require balance on one leg. And, the coaches all know me and my story, and I often use those T straps to give myself extra help in case I am unstable. And, that's you need to use accommodations where they help you. And on the treadmill, I never let go of the treadmill. Um, Prior to my diagnosis, I had been working out on a treadmill and lost my balance. And who knows, this could have been because of the acoustic neuroma or entirely separate, but I fell on the treadmill and I have a scar about this long on my leg from that. So, not going to be doing that again.
You know, it is funny when you look back in hindsight. I had some similar moments, and I think it's odd because, like you were describing, I think often when you have an acoustic neuroma and you don't realize, you lose your balance, like kind of like snap, and then maybe you get it back, but it's like you have like a minute where it's just like it, and I fell off a stationary exercise bike and I laughed so hard. I was like, this is so weird. Who even does how is that even possible? Like this is such a silly story. And then later on I find out I have a brain tumor on my balance nerve and I'm like, oh, well that does explain some things. But it wasn't like I was off balance all of the time, which is what you would
Right.
think. Like you would think that, oh yeah, like you probably struggle with walking and like I would be fine, but then I wouldn't be fine. And it's funny how those things sort of creep in and you don't
Yes.
necessarily even put it all together until you find out about the tumor. Yeah. Wow. Well, are there any positives or good stories or wonderful people that you have met as a result of this diagnosis?
Oh, 100%. I met some really fascinating people in the local DC chapter and then through the musicians group as well. But, I think I've learned a lot through the experience, and it has definitely changed my life for the better. I don't take anything for granted. I realize, life is very precious and we just never know what's going to crop up. And whatever comes your way, you got to deal with it and keep a smile on your face.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you had some advice that you would like to share, if someone were to watch this podcast and maybe they're recently diagnosed or maybe they're not, what's something that you think would be a useful takeaway for them?
Definitely investigate all of your treatment options. Don't just get one opinion, get multiple opinions. And for me, the vibe that I got from the treatment facility and the team that was going to be treating me was very, very important. And at Pittsburgh, I just felt like they really had my best interest at heart and they wanted it to be successful and they really cared about me as an individual. And I did not get the same feeling from some of the other places that I went.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're really entrusting them with a lot. And so
Absolutely.
you want them to be on your team at
Yes.
minimum.
Yes. And I was able to email both my radiation oncologist and my neurotologist afterward with any questions or as things came up that I was concerned about, and they responded very quickly and professionally, and they helped me. So
That's
it was a good
awesome.
experience all around.
Especially too, since symptoms from radiation aren't immediate, right? And you got
Right.
treatment so far away from where you live. And so
Yes,
to have that good communication makes all the difference.
absolutely.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm so glad to hear that you had such a great experience, and I really appreciate you sharing your story today. Any other thoughts that you'd like to share?
I mean, I can't say enough good things about the Acoustic Neuroma Association. I think that's a membership that's really worth continuing, and they have a lot of positive things to offer.
Absolutely. And if you're newly diagnosed or a new patient, you can get a free membership to start you off, and they send you all kinds of really useful booklets and information. And besides all the support groups and places to connect with other people who have the same experience. So the Acoustic Neuroma Association is an absolutely wonderful organization, and they're small, but they do a lot with a small group. So it's not like some of those big nonprofits where you're like, where's your money going? Like, the membership is not expensive, and you know it's going to the right places for sure with the
Definitely.
Acoustic Neuroma Association. So wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Betty. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.